Hey everyone, it's Erica here with Creators and Coffee, and joining me today is Jim Beaver of JB15 is his company, but you probably know him from all of his racing days and his podcast and the many other things that he's doing. So, hey Jim,
Hey, how's it going? Great to be here.
good. So nice to have you. Jim is actually in our creator roundtable, which we started a couple months ago. And ever since that, our very first roundtable, when he spoke up and talked about how he thinks of creators, influencers, the role of a driver, whatever you want to call the words, it really resonated with me because there's a lot of talk about diversification, thinking as a driver, as a racer, thinking of yourself more broadly than just I'm going to show up and I'm going to race today, that there's a lot more to it. So, Jim, tell us a little bit about how you kind of got started, your background, and then we can go from there.
Well, I mean, my dad's raced off-road. Well, I raced. He's retired now, but he raced off-road for 35, 40 years. So I was around it growing up. I mean, there's pictures of me at the track, like 1 month old in my mom's arms when my dad was racing and things like that. So I've been around it. When I turned 20, 21, I kind of started racing again and really kind of built my own truck. And, at the time, built a trophy truck. And I spent 10 years kind of in the industry, racing and had some wins and stuff like that, but the wins didn't mean sponsorships, it didn't mean anything.
Right.
I was on magazine covers, still no sponsors, none of that, and treaded water for about, a decade and, it was actually a conversation. I did a favor through Ford. My family's got a Ford dealership for Ken Block, and it led to, Ken invited me out to Las Vegas Motor Speedway for a rallycross race, and, I was there, and, it ended up being a bad crash, and they shut the race down for, like, 2 hours. So I sat there for, like, 2 hours with Ken Block, and we were just talking and things like that, and, he became one of my mentors, and purposely, but he just did. We became
Right.
really close friends, and you're around a guy like that, you just soak it all in. But that one conversation there, with him, I kinda looked at how he was doing things and how he was presenting himself and what he was bringing to the table. I'm like, it's something just clicked. And I went, "This is the way it works. We're marketing companies. We're not racers." Robbie Gordon, is a good friend of mine. He said the same thing. He goes, "You're not a racer, you're a marketing company." And he goes, "Whatever that means is what you need to be." And for different brands and different people, it means something else. I mean, right now, I haven't been behind the wheel of a race car in 3 years and haven't lost one sponsor because of it. It's because, these partners like, hey, we're shifting gears. We need more automotive content. We need more events. We need activations. We need digital and the racing wasn't doing it, so they stayed on at the same levels they were. Truthfully, my costs and overheads got way down, but I'm still making, bringing in the same amount of money, which is means I'm more profitable now than I was before. But, it started with a podcast in 2011, and honestly, I say I still got it. It started with a $30 Walmart headset. I didn't have a lot of money in the bank. I had a Twitter account because I wasn't paying any attention to social at the time. I had a Twitter account, no Facebook, no anything, Twitter account with like 200 friends and a
Right.
$30 Walmart headset. And fast forward 15 years and, it's all worked out, but it was a lot of hard work, legwork, dedication, kind of trying to be in areas other people weren't, trying to be ahead of the curve, and diversification, not having everything in one cookie jar, and I think that's it's one of the big things for me. It's like the whole TikTok shutdown, that they were gonna shut TikTok down. You had all these people crying foul, "Oh, my livelihood, my career is gonna be gone. I've got everything I own wrapped up in TikTok." And I'm like, "Yeah, you shouldn't."
Yeah.
Instagram goes away tomorrow, I'm fine.
Right. Right.
Facebook goes away tomorrow, which is same company, but it's one of those where you can't be reliant on one platform or one thing, period. It's a lot of racers are like, "I'm a race car driver. I don't do social. I don't do email. I don't do marketing." I'm like, "Well, it just you can't do one thing. You gotta do it all in this industry." We all wear different hats, and depending on, me, depending on the phone call, it's a different hat?
Let's talk about so that first sponsorship crossover, right? Where it's kind of now it's clicked. You were chatting with Ken Block and you're really realizing, oh, shoot, what I have to offer another avenue for them to reach customers, right? Nobody's sponsoring out of the good of their heart because they just want to sponsor, right? Unless it's their kids or their family, but typically it is because they think there's some perceived benefit, whether it's customers, whether it's reputation, whether it's aligning themselves with someone cool or cool events. So talk a little bit about how you kind of crossed over, got those first few sponsors. What did that take? I mean, I know it's been a while, but what did that take to finally get that first paying sponsor? Like
Yeah, and I
that
think
big
that's the
cash
key.
money. Yeah.
That's the key, the paying sponsor, and there is absolutely room for product sponsors. I mean, I've
Oh,
got a
totally.
I've got a huge build I'm doing with Ford right now that's gonna be at Electrify Expo, and I'm taking on a lot of product sponsors right now, and it's strictly because I would be writing a check for that product if they weren't sponsoring me. So to me, it's money in hand. So there are places, especially in motorsport. I mean, if you've got consumables, tire sponsor sometime in motorsport is a great thing if you can get one, because you're just burning through tires. But money, the whole thing prior to that conversation with Ken, I was actually on a radio show. I'd won a race or something, and I was on a radio show. Podcasts were really, really early at that point. It was a FM radio show. And, some of my sponsors like, "Hey," the product sponsors at the time, "Hey, man, we got a lot of value out of that. That was cool, thanks, you gave us some shout out," and I started thinking, I'm like, "Alright, so if me appearing for 20 minutes on a show gave them value, what if I own the show?" It was one of those where, yeah, if I own the time, I can talk about whatever I want. I can interview whoever I want. There's value in that. Well, at that time, there was, getting on FM radio or AM radio, that's pretty tough. So, podcasting was starting out. So it was a live podcast.
Which is crazy now to think about, like the live podcast.
Yeah, I called it a radio show because nobody
Yeah,
would sponsor podcasts in 2011. Everyone's like,
right.
podcast, that's nonsense. Now it's all anybody talks about. But then I called it a radio show, even though it was a podcast, because nobody would sponsor a
That's
podcast.
smart. That's all
Um,
marketing.
Yeah, it was all marketing, but, 3 or 4 months in, I got my, first sponsor and, it was like $200 a month for the show, but, my costs on the show were like $30 a month for whatever, and I was and so things ramped up from there and started bringing in more, and as listenership, I was lucky that I knew a lot of people, knew a lot of racers that were higher profile, so I was punching above my weight class. Listenership wasn't that high, but I was getting AAA guests, and so then things, you know what I mean? Then the numbers started coming in, so I was just really fortunate and, right place, right time, podcasts, then all of a sudden podcast became a thing, and I was established and had this huge, following and things like that, so it was really, kind of fortunate, but it was just, the sticker on the side of the race car wasn't doing it, but then all of a sudden I, could go, "Hey, I can," at the time it was, 5, 10,000 people weekly, can we do that? Now that's escalated, to 6 figures weekly, but it was one of those where it was like, "Hey, I can offer this." And so then it became there was this value proposition with me. It was like, "Oh, he's guaranteeing ROI. Yeah, we'll give him, 15 grand this year because even if he is horrible on the racetrack, we know that we're gonna get the value, out of the radio show." That was kind of what started everything.
And how did you show them the value from the radio show? How did you like when afterwards, like when they're like, "Oh, we got the value." Like, how would you show that back then? Just give
Oh,
them
I
the
think a lot of
numbers?
it was is at that point in time, I was the only person doing any kind of show like that. So I
Yeah,
had an entire industry paying attention. So it
right.
became a thing. Like I've got companies going, "Hey, will you get our driver on? Will you get this on?" So it really I didn't have to show it because everybody was tuned in. It was one of those where like I said again, right place, right time. Now there's 30 podcasts doing the same thing I was doing 15 years ago. So
At least 30. I would wager across the automotive spectrum, even just in racing, there's probably 100.
yeah.
There's so many. I mean, Formula Drift has at least 5,
Yeah, and
different
which
people
is
doing.
funny because at the time, I actually had a agreement with Formula Drift, and we were doing a Formula Drift segment after every Formula D event, and Ryan Sage would come on, and Deanda, and, Lorette Nickel at the time, and, that's how I got to know Osbo and Faust and, Vaughn and, all these people. It was just funny because there were no FD podcasts, so they had a 15, 20 minute segment on my show after every event, and we were
Yeah.
interviewing their guys because nobody was doing an FD podcast.
I know. Now they've got what, their own I think they might have 2. I don't know. They have at least 1. And that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's one thing when people will be like, "Oh, you didn't have to show anything." I think one thing to that, to your point, is there was a reputation. It was a thing. And
Yes.
there is some, luck and everything, kind of that right time, right place. But now to your point, I mean, your podcast is still going. what else do you do, right? Because now you have competition for those ears or for those listeners, and, when we think of the amount of content that people can consume nowadays, it's overwhelming, right? Like, I mean, there's so much, they call it the attention economy, right? There's so much trying to get our attention. So what else do you do to try to break through?
Well, I think what happened was is we kinda created its own media company because as you getting that, then all of a sudden you start a website, and then it was like, "Ah, well, we can do more than 1 show a week on here." We started writing a few articles, and then you start developing an email list, which I've got a massive email list now, so that's another value proposition because most people you ask most racers, "What's your email list look like?" 15 people?" And somebody comes in there, "Hey, I got 35,000 email subscribers that opted in," and people like, "What?" Yeah,
Yeah.
we can target those people now.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those, but then you get the website, and then along with that, you get enough traffic, banner ads are there, which obviously banner ads aren't that big of a deal, but 15 years ago, banner ads were a huge deal. So it was just packaging things, and then I became, got into national radio, and all of a sudden I've got my podcast inventory, but I own inventory on 200 AM FM networks, but and then we're starting extra. We've got one account that's on social platforms. We're starting seconds and thirds, and we're growing those followings using the main one. So now instead of one Instagram account, we've got five that all have, these huge followings. And so you have to scale it up. And it's not an overnight thing, but 15 years in, if you start, it's one of those you got to take baby steps. And I tell racers that I'm like, I'm still signing deals with companies that are people I've known for 5, 6 years. And it was right time, and you shake hands, you introduce yourself, you keep conversations going. Nothing happens overnight in
Mm-mm.
the automotive industry. It takes time after I've been using Ford products. My dad owns a Ford dealership, and I'm 15 years into this and finally got my first, kind of deal with Ford. It took 15 years. And they knew me and I knew them, and it took 15 years. So it's just one of those where it's like, it takes time. You've gotta invest the time, and I think that's one of the biggest things is people have this sense of urgency. They send you a proposal, and then immediately, like, the next week, they're like, "Oh, so what do you think? You gonna give me 20 grand?" It's like,
Yeah. Well, or
it's
even coming out of the gate swinging, looking for 20 grand because they hear these numbers getting thrown around. But to your point, they haven't created the platform for 20 grand. They don't have the email list. They've squandered all of those trips to the track where they could have been collecting, or any event, any exhibition event where they could have been collecting email addresses, or, continuing to work on, even if it's not a podcast or just multiple presences where they've got now a platform they can offer these partners versus like, "Oh, I can talk about you on my TikTok page." That's bad. I mean, that's part of it, but it's just to your point, now those racers are beholden to that one platform. That algorithm shifts and you put all your value there, right? And to your point, we are seeing more and more brands. I mean, we see it on Autofluence because obviously we are a measurement tool where they do now want some measurement. They do want to look at data because it's hard for people to come out now and be like the only one doing it, right? There isn't a new platform to be like, oh, I'm the only one with an audience on this new platform. But I do want to come back to email addresses. So how do you use your email database? Like, do you message them with like updates of like new podcasts, new goings
Well,
on?
people have got flooded, so now it's one of those where I have this thing, and I was, taught this by a friend of mine that was a really good marketer, and it's been kinda one of my mentors over the years, but you send an email when you either have something really big to say or you have a lot to say.
Right.
So it's one of those, just because something small happened, don't send an email out because you're gonna piss people off. Ah, spam, delete, or they're gonna unsubscribe. But if you've got a major announcement to make, send an email. Or if you've got 5 smaller announcements, make them all in one email. But don't flood people's inboxes because same thing, the people's email inboxes are getting saturated with just stuff, and if they get one from you every 45 days and they're gonna see it pop through and be like, "Man, wonder what Jim's up to. We haven't seen anything from him in a month and a half." And so they'll click on it and be like, "Oh, this is awesome." But if, people are getting, 5 a week from me, they're not gonna pay attention.
Right. Right. Right.
So I'm not and
Yeah.
Amazon is like the complete opposite, they're e-commerce, they're gonna send you 30 a day, hoping you click a
It's
link
so
and buy a
many.
product, but that's,
They do
you know
still get me though. There are certain deals where I'm like, "What?" Darn it. And then you click on one and they know it, and then you get more. Same
you
thing
know,
on social, like, you accidentally click on an ad, you're like, "Oh," and
right?
you get all the ads. Like, I when we're moving, so I clicked on a couch, and now I know every couch that's on the market right now, thanks to that algorithm.
I'm not saying that's the proper way to do email, that's just the way I do email. I think there's a bunch of different strategies for email and
But it's good to have, and I will say, I think for me, we've become more and more bullish just in our conversations with creators about having some kind of strategy around at least capturing email addresses and thinking about, whether it's a newsletter, whether it's, some kind of update. And to your point, it has to be interesting, right? Like there's got to be some purpose to it, just like anything. Anything you put on social, if you're gonna do a podcast, if you're gonna do a blog, like you have to make it interesting. You have to be a storyteller, and that's what's going to get people engaged with you and to trust you. And then, when you are recommending brands, there's that alignment. They want to align with you because they know your audience trusts you. Moving from there, I mean, so you've mentioned it a couple times. You do give advice a lot, right? You've got a big media platform. So let's start with advice you would give to racers today, that are in their first couple years. They're starting to get frustrated because of lack of perceived sponsorships, right? They might have product partnerships. Most people are pretty good at finding some product partnerships, but they're getting frustrated on lack of paid. What advice would you give there?
well, I think there's, and this is pretty much industry standard across the board, but if you're a racer, you're supposed to take, throw just something out there. So say you get a $10,000 sponsor. You're supposed to take 25% of that and set it aside for media. And I've seen stuff as high as 40%, 25, let's say it's based because with that, you can go and you can hire a photographer. You can get somebody to help you with social media just at the day at the track when you're there racing, things like that. But, I think that's one of my big pieces of advice is take 25% of whatever comes in and use it for media. Whether you're having a video made, you hire a social person, whatever, because at the end of the race, whether you got first place or you got 15th place, it's really nice to be able to send those sponsors an email and be like, "Hey, here's what happened. By the way, here's a Dropbox of photos from this weekend that you guys can use for your social," and things like that, and I think people forget, but something like that because then all of a sudden the sponsors, one, they're not having to pay for photos. They're right there, especially if their rights are royalty free. Then they're going to go, "Oh, this is easy Instagram post or this is easy social post," and so they throw it up, and then they're marketing you more because you gave them the key to market. You're making it really easy for them. So I think that's one of the biggest pieces of advice, just that one simple thing. Take 25% of what you've got and throw it at media. It's going to help you grow roots and, you'll start seeing things come from it because then all of a sudden other sponsors are seeing this media come out and they're going, "Hey, this one company is posting all about this guy. If I gave him a little money, I'm going to get to piggyback those marketing efforts for the other company too." And it becomes this ecosystem where you've got all these partners working together.
Yeah,
And it's, rising tides, raise
I
all
love that
ships
quote.
or whatever
Yep,
that saying is, but
it's my favorite. Yep.
lift all ships. And it's kind of one of those where you start getting that ecosystem and these partners involved and everybody rises.
Yep, I love that, and we've gotta find out, though, a racing version of that. I've been, like, trying to figure it out of the rising tide list. I'm like, "A smooth track, wait, what about if it's off-road? That doesn't work, or a dirt course," so we've gotta think of the racing one because the only one is boats, so, um,
Crafting
but
cars make everybody faster. I don't
I
know.
maybe that's
Uh,
it. So, that's such a good point. I love that advice of putting money aside. So few people do that. Now I know some people think, "Oh, I gotta get someone to pay first," right? And that's kind of what Jim was saying before. You've got to, get, get content out there. You've got to show them that value. And sometimes I will say too, go ahead and tag people before they're a sponsor. If you're using their products, every single brand, and we're going to start releasing some of our brand creators and coffee that we've been recording. Literally almost every single one of them says the number one person we're gonna look at is someone we know who's already using our products. Like, there's nothing that frustrates them more than someone trying to hit them up to be like, "Oh, you could conquest me." And they're like, "Well, you don't even use our products currently. Like, why would we pay you to," like, and so, go ahead and tag some of those partners now, start to get some of that partnership to get a paid. But I love the advice of once you do start getting paid, invest in yourself, invest in the media. I think a lot of people don't take that advice, and then it becomes one more thing they're having to do. It overwhelms them. They saw, they've got a girlfriend or a significant other or a boyfriend, someone out there trying to capture all the media for them. And and it's not super high quality. I think, and there's always photographers and media people out there. You don't have to necessarily bring your own,
Oh,
right?
there's
You
so many photographers at a given track, walk up and be like, "Hey, what's your cost to shoot this weekend?" Because those guys are there shooting already.
Yeah.
You know, that's the best way to do it, is find out what photographers or videographers will already be at the track and
Yep.
hire them. Then you're not, edit the photos. They'll put together a reel for you or whatever after the event and just hand turn it to you. And that's the affordable way to do it. I mean, obviously, once you scale up, you can bring in your own media crew, but I would just use somebody that's already there. Every track has somebody there that's shooting. I guarantee it, and they're for hire.
I love that. And then, so what advice do you have for brands on the sponsorship, partnership side when it comes specifically to taking a chance on kind of newer people, or thinking about kind of continuing to support the ecosystem, right? If they only ever support the top guys, it's going to be hard to keep it going, if there's not kind of money flowing down into the level. So, what advice would you give to brands and maybe even brands that have been product only and they're contemplating maybe moving to paid? What advice would you give them?
One of the biggest things is, yeah, everybody wants to sign, you know what I mean, the biggest, yeah, everybody wants, Dale Earnhardt Jr. or whoever, it's just one of those, like, yes, it's always nice to go to the top, but the thing is, don't sleep on, there's a lot of people with 5, 10,000 social media followers who aren't that big of a name, but they're doing some really high quality content. They're doing some really good stuff. They're winning races. Don't sleep on them, because what I have learned is, because I've managed brand budgets, also I've worn lots of different hats in this industry. You come in and you give somebody that's smaller 2 grand, $2,500, they're gonna fight wars for you. They're gonna fight in the trenches. If you're that first paying sponsor and they're already doing things right and you're looking at them on social media and you like the way they carry themselves and they're having some success, step up, write them a small check. Doesn't have to be big, write them a small
Right.
check, and they will fight wars for you. That will be your number one brand ambassador. You're going to get 30 posts a week. They're going to be over the
Yeah.
moon. You know what I mean? It's like, I mean, trust me, when you water those seeds, it will grow. And it's one of those where I think a lot of brands say, oh, I'm just going to give this person some product or a product credit. I'm like, and I know what brands blow money on. I mean, it's nonsense. You know what I mean? Instead of buying $15,000 worth of lanyards to hand out at the events, buy 14,000 and give this person $1,000 bucks. It's
Yeah. I would
there's
I would
money in
also
the
say
budgets.
cut down. And as much as I'm wearing a hat right now, we all have them. We could probably do with less than half the hats, right? Like, because
Well, they're
they're going to end
crappy
up,
hats, and I'm
you
calling the
know,
brands out on that one too. If you're gonna give out a hat, make it a decent one. Don't make it the stuff from China that you're paying 50 cents a copy for that everybody just throws it away when they get home.
so as much as I'm wearing my hat from China,
Actually a
it
nice
wasn't.
hat though.
Yeah, it wasn't 50 cents because I got it embroidered, and that was kind of expensive. It was way more than 50 cents, unfortunately. They buy in bulk, though. Mine's not as bulk. I think that's great advice. I think that's, it's good, to think about that first check and remind it doesn't need to be a 5,000, 10,000. I think sometimes brands will see these proposals that come in and you can negotiate. I think brands forget that too. Like, just because someone came in swinging at like 5 grand, like, give a sister a high five for asking for a big number, but then like walk them back down to what you would like to see. And it's a negotiation, right? Because it's a relationship you're building, and either they're going to say no or they're going to say, yeah, okay. Because they might have had somebody giving them advice, be like, oh, yeah, they got deep pockets. Hit him between the eyes, and you don't know.
Well, and I tell racers that too, and well, racers and influencers, to me, it all kinda crosses over. Don't don't be scared to ask for a larger number, but if you do, you better have the deliverables and the data to back up the number. I've seen stuff come through, "Oh, I need $100,000," and I'm like, "Well, where's the value in this?" "Well, what do you
Right.
mean? It cost me 100 grand to race my car this year." I don't care. Where am I getting my 100,000? Well, that's what it cost me. Well, just because it costs you that to race doesn't mean there's $100,000 in ROI.
I got a proposal sent to me actually from a guy I met on LinkedIn, and he is trying to run an Indy car, and he's in Indy Next, and he did a few races last year, and he sent me his proposal deck. Not it talks about his past sponsors, but nothing about the value he brings. Just talks about the races. I was like, "Bro, like, do you have any social? Do you have it like, what are you gonna do for the brands?" And he was like, "Oh, I think I could add something about that." I'm like, like, he's asking for some huge numbers, and I'm like, just to, I don't, yeah, I was just very confused by what the value proposition was,
Well, and
and
Indy
feeling a
and
little bad for that's probably why none of those other past sponsors renewed.
yeah, well, and Indy Next, I mean, you look at, 2 of the ones in the last couple of years, I mean, Haley Deegan and, Lindsey Brewer, I can tell you what their proposals look like because they got a few million Instagram followers
Yeah,
apiece, you know what I mean? They're bringing
and they
in
have
sponsor
great
for Indy.
content.
Yeah, they're bringing in sponsors for Indy Next.
Yeah,
Absolutely, they are, but, I mean, look what they're they're their own media companies.
yes,
That Lindsay and Haley both do phenomenal work. Like, whether you
yeah,
like them personally or not, the girls are killing it.
yeah, and I mean, I think you see that across the board of the people, and it's kind of that old adage, you know, uh don't hate the player, hate the game, right? Of like, it's just the way it is now, right? And you can rail against it and you can philosophize how things should be different. You should be able to go out and just race and people should support you to just race, but it's really never been that way. Sponsorship has always been just like anything. If anybody's going to give you money, in most cases, unless you are a 501(c)(3) and you're offering them your nonprofit, they want something in return. And even with the nonprofit, what are they getting in return? A tax break. So there's always something. It's a give and take. So I think that's a great reminder, kind of great note to end on. Now, what's next for you? What are kind of how are you seeing the future of things playing out as you think of how you've already diversified? Is there something you're eyeing or, you know,
Well, it's tough. Right now, I can be honest with you, social media is kind of a weird place right now, especially with the short form video content. There's a lot of garbage on social media. It's actually just trash content at this point, and it's my Instagram algorithm has gone on the toilet. A lot of my friends have too.
I
It's
think
a weird
everybody's has, yeah.
clickbaity.
Yep.
I think Instagram, I think they're gonna have to right the ship at some point because their platform really has turned to garbage. I think there's a place for some of that clickbaity stuff, but I think they've also gotten way far away from what they wanted to be or what they are. I see YouTube continuing to just blow up. YouTube's nuts. I would say if you don't have a YouTube channel, you need to like stat. And, so I think as
I would
far as
say it's hard though. A lot of people, I think, underestimate the effort that is YouTube. So
I
if
would
you're
say the key to YouTube right now though, is you can so they have their short form stuff, the shorts, and then they have their long form videos, which has always
yeah.
been there. Long form videos, to get subscribers, to get traction. Their shorts right now, that's the ticket because if it's easy to get subscribers through shorts, it's the same content you're posting to TikTok or to Instagram. And the trick is if somebody subscribes to you off shorts, they're subscribing to your channel as a whole, not just the shorts. So your long form stuff, in the future will get some plays. So I'd say right now, the gateway to YouTube, it's easier than ever because they're allowing these shorts to grow your entire following and not just a shorts following. So but I would agree, it's an investment, but it's not going away. I mean, that is growing. You see what Netflix is doing with the live sports and things like that, and YouTube, I guarantee you, YouTube's been doing live streaming for a while, and that live stuff with motorsports and things like that, I think it's gonna get even more prevalent. So
Well,
if
they
you're
just got
there
that game that's gonna be in Brazil, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're gonna air it fully live.
So I would say YouTube and live stuff. I mean, the content. I mean, I even know in desert racing right now, we've got Starstream and things like that, and they're live streaming in car from from say the Baja 1000 or King of the Hammers, the entire race, right to YouTube channels and things like that. So YouTube, I think, is really. I mean, it's not going any away anytime soon. It's
Yeah,
one of those. So if you haven't invested, do it now, and 5 years from now, you'll be happy you did.
yeah. I think that's a good point. Again, if you're gonna put the effort in. I keep saying that 'cause some people start and stop, and I will say with YouTube, they are not forgiving if you stop.
Yeah. Don't
So,
start, throw 3 videos up and be like, "Oh, I got 5 watchers, I'm over it," you know?
it is an investment, it takes time. I know some people that have been doing it for 3 years now, and they've been nailed by the algorithm on YouTube. Still tough. All of them are tough because there is so much going on, but
And
if you have a good strategy and a good storyteller.
I will say, Kyla that's in our group, she's a good friend of mine, and I help her out. So, she started a YouTube channel 4 or 5 months ago. This might be one for the next roundtable for her to say, but, she started it and, no subscribers started the channel, no subscribers, and we're talking 3 months ago. She started throwing some long form stuff. She hired an editor and, they were getting 7,500 views to her long form stuff. She started throwing up her reels, just throwing them up there. One bit on YouTube, went viral, millions and millions of viewers, and she had a very small channel, like 10 people. Overnight, 600 subscribers to her channel, 700 subscribers to her channel because the short bit. So now her long form content's now getting 7, 8, 900 views. We're talking a girl who started the channel 3 months ago, and it's
Right.
all of a sudden going gangbusters for her, and she's about ready to get monetized, and I'm like, "That was 3 months ago she started her channel. It's
Wow,
not a long
that's
time ago."
amazing.
So so it can happen, and I'm like, "This is a friend of mine who just started 3 months ago."
I though also knowing Kyla and is, through the round table and following her, she also has very good content
Yeah, she
that
hustles.
she's putting on there. She's putting the effort in, and you mentioned the key word is hiring an editor because you will burn yourself out if you're gonna try to do long form all by yourself and keep everything else alive. Because very few of our creators have, the luxury of not working a day job. Most all of them work day jobs.
It's not hard to find an editor either, and I think that's the thing, people think that it's high dollar. I'm like, I've got a guy I use out of Phoenix just getting started. He's very affordable, does super high quality work. There's a lot of kids in college that are
Yeah,
editing, you know what I mean, that are editing videos and stuff because you're trying to get a degree in that, and they're just doing side work, and hungry college kids will edit videos for hardly anything. So,
yeah. Where do
and it's
you
pretty high.
find what tool do you use to find different editors?
Mine was word of mouth. I got
Word of mouth, okay.
yeah. So, and I've
Yeah,
got some high-end video production companies I use for a lot of my bigger projects, but for smaller stuff, I use the smaller editors and they do great.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
I call it you can get something content-wise, you can get something that's not 100% good. It's 90% good. And it'll do just as good. It's like finding that extra 10%, going from something that's 90% polished to 100% polished. You're not gonna increase your views very much, but the costs and everything else are gonna escalate. So it's like you find somebody that'll work in that 80 to 90%, and make it, you can't pick your stuff apart because generally content that's not perfect, but it's pretty close will do just as well. And, you just don't wanna put trash out there.
yeah. Completely agreed. Okay, we went super long, but it was a great conversation. So, Jim, thank you so much for being on and keep on going.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, bye.